They're our best bets. Good. Wednesday we go, and we kick off with the Irish Mirror Novices Hurdle. And Matt and Don are in agreement. You can make your case. I'll give you prices when I get the screen up after that. Donn McClean, kick us off.
Yeah, look, I think Gaelic Warrior is a worthy favourite, all right. Going right-handed's going to suit him, and his run at Cheltenham was a good run when he finished second behind on Paris Pass. I just worry about the trip. Maybe that he'll be good over 3 miles, but I just think that Willie Mullins has so many 2.5 milers, the aforementioned Empire Pass, Sean Kiley, that something had to go over 3 miles. And look, maybe this has been the plan for Gaelic Warrior, but I think maybe that's just he's been forced into the race because of where his stable companions might be going. And Affordale Fury, by contrast, he's a real 3 miler. He's a massive price in the Albert Bartlett Hurdle, and he ran a big race. He's a horse who's always been held in high regard by Noel Meade. He won his maiden hurdle impressively, beat Monbeg Park that day, and he's gone on and enhanced that form since. And then it was that Grade 3 race at Navan, the Monksfield Hurdle, when he and American Mike kind of took each other on. Now he fell at the last that day. Don Rising went and won it, but you have to allow him that. And maybe at Naas the next day he hadn't fully recovered from that in the Lawlers race. And look, that was a Grade 1 race as well, over 2.5 miles. So 3 miles we saw in the Albert Bartlett. That's his trip. And you think, maybe he's had a hard race in the Albert Bartlett Hurdle, but Albert Bartlett Hurdle runners and winners do very well in this race. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Noel Meade's horses are in tremendous form as well. So yeah, I think Affordale Fury could put it up to Gaelic Warrior.
All right. And Matt, sorry, what do you want to
add? Particularly about that record of Albert Bartlett horses that Don's talked about. The context for this is that in the shorter races, the Grade 1 winners at Cheltenham, or the obvious hot pots, tend to go off very short, but they don't here. If you look at the actual winners of the Albert Bartlett, 2 of the 5 have won. One of them went off 6.0. 3 of them have beaten and run well 6.0, 5.5. They're not going off odds on. So if you back the Albert Bartlett winners, you made a 78% profit. If you back the winners of the Supreme and Ballymore in those races, even though they've got a similar win record, you'd be making losses. So these horses tend to be underestimated, tend to be backable prices. He's got the best 3 mile hurdles form by some way here, and yet he's about 6.5. So you have got a new jockey on him in Danny McMenamin, fresh off graded wins at Aintree and Ayr. He's never ridden at Punchestown before, so that's a little bit of a negative. Equally, Sam Ewing had not ridden a winner at Cheltenham when he rode him in the Albert Bartlett. So hopefully that'll be neutral. I think that's enough to stop me getting the wheelbarrow out. But at the prices, I think he is far too big. And I think that Gaelic Warrior, as Don has pointed out, is definitely a questionable stayer. So I think he's good value here, Affordale Fury.
Okay, well, that was going to be my next question, whether anybody actually thinks Gaelic Warrior won't stay, but there's no real confidence from anyone that he will, right? Doesn't seem, other than me.
No, I think he's a class above everything else in this race, but I think when you're looking at even money about a horse you've got stamina question marks about, I think that's always enough to look elsewhere, in my opinion.
With who, Dan?
Yeah, so I mean, a bit of a leap of faith for this one, but Calanisi Star. So he came into this season with quite a big reputation. I mean, he won that 2 mile 2 bumper at the Gorham Park that's produced plenty of stars of the past. Monbeg Park was second that day, 16 lengths behind. So he's turned out to be a fairly useful horse this season as well. Started off well over hurdles, beating Pink in the Park over 2 miles, went clearly a trip short of his best and carrying a lot of condition. It all kind of went backwards thereafter. He was 15-8 favourite for a Grade 2 at Limerick. Bit of a strange ride that day, having been quite positively ridden previously. He was patiently ridden and never landed a blow, and then turned out 2 weeks later for the Lawlers and Naas, where again just tailed off and never really seeming himself. Been given a long break since. Tongue tie goes on, and it's Ollie McKinnon has a knack of getting horses placed at big prices. I remember last year at this festival, he had Meet and Greet at 34.0 placed. Gatsby Gray, I think, was 101.0, managed to fill the frame. I think he's still got potential as a horse, and I think the market's pretty much disregarded him because of those 2 poor runs. But in a race where I wasn't overly enamoured with much in behind Gaelic Warrior, I thought it was worth siding with something at a decent price, and I can see him being ridden to pick up the pieces if the race does indeed fall apart a bit.
Okay, he's got the tongue tie for the first time. If those of you are watching, our producer has just put up a photo of the winner, favourite, sorry. But Gaelic Warrior, I take the point about the stamina. I mean, on it, his flat pedigree would suggest that he's absolutely laid out for 2.5 and might get 3 if you're trying to make that dodgy equation to jump racing. But I just think 6.5 lengths within Impero Pass is so far and away that anything else could put up that I'm thinking class will absolutely get him through. And today's 2.2. I honestly thought he'd be odds on. So I think he's that much better than the rest of these. Obviously, if it was 2.5, he'd be more confident. But I think he'll be just far too good for them. And I'm not out and out. He won't stay the trip. So I'm with Gaelic Warrior. Not sort of best bet material, but nothing else against him was really floating my boat. Let's move on. Gaelic Warrior for me. Affordable Fury for Matt and Don. Calanese Star winning place for Dan. The Punchestown Gold Cup. Right, we've got a couple of withouts. First of all, quick line on how good Galopin Des Champs is, Dan, and why you can't see past him for all you don't want to back him, but not too long.
I just thought that Gold Cup performance was one of the best we've seen in recent times. I know Conflated blew out slightly, which may make people question it slightly, but the way he powered up the hill that day, I think Brave Man's Game is absolutely run up to his best then, and he just looked a fresh horse coming up that hill, which is incredibly tough to do. So I think we're dealing with a very, very special staying chaser here.
Matt Toombs?
Agree with that. And just on the record of Gold Cup winners coming here, 4 have tried this century, 3 have won. The other one was 2 lengths second and pretty much run his race. So the concern that you would have in somewhere like the Bowl, which is often 3 weeks after Aintree, and they don't run up to form. Here it's 6 weeks, and I'd be pretty optimistic he'll run close enough to form to beat these.
Well, so that was going to be my point really on Brave Man's Game. I don't necessarily think he will beat Galopin Des Champs. I thought 2 out at Cheltenham. There was a chance he would, but he was outclassed and I think outstayed up the hill. But I think there's based upon his Kempton performance, I think there's just a chance that I don't want to say he's better right-handed because he ran so well in the Gold Cup, but that was always at the back of their minds, I think. And I think there's a chance to get a bit closer to Galopin Des Champs. I think he'll run his race. And at the prices, 1.36 Galopin Des Champs, Brave Man's Game 6.5, Edward Allen 12.0, Hewitt 23, Fury Road 34, Fast or Slow 67, who I had a good look at for some reason and then realised I was being insane. I thought Brave Man's Game 6.5. I'll play him in every market. So I'll play him in 2 places because I'm so sure he'll finish ahead of everything else. I'll play him without the favourite, and I'll also play him in the outright market. But the money on that will hopefully be covered certainly by the betting without market win, if that makes sense. So I'm going to play Brave Man's Game all ends up here. Don, who are you with?
Yeah, sounds like a good plan, Tom. I'm with Edward Allen though. Yeah, I just so Galopin Des Champs, agree with the lads. He's a phenomenon. He's only 7. He's improving. Seisenjohn's the only horse to win the 3 Gold Cups, the Irish Gold Cup, the Cheltenham Gold Cup, and the Punchestown Gold Cup. And when he won the Punchestown Gold Cup, he only just got home from Jacado and Coney Green. Remember that race? Like, it was a hell of a race between the 3 of them. And Robbie Parr said afterwards that he just wasn't at his best. It was only his class saw him home. And Galopin Des Champs, the Gold Cup was obviously a really tough race this year. It was run at a fast pace. And while Paul Tynan was brilliant on Galopin Des Champs, not panicking, riding him cold out the back, he still had to have had a hard race. That said, I think he can probably perform at least a little way below his best and still win. Brave Man's Game, I'm not sure that he has the same luxury. And I don't know, is it a factor that he was going to Aintree and he couldn't run there, so he's coming here instead? And like in terms of training methodology, maybe not, but it wasn't his ultimate target after Cheltenham. Aintree was. So I'm not sure if that's going to impact. Edward Allen, by contrast, this has been his target. He did disappoint in the King George, but that just wasn't his running. He's got 50 lengths to find on Brave Man's Game on that running, so obviously he's going to have to leave that form a wee bit behind him. But he won the Down Royal race over 3 miles. He was very, very good in the Ryanair. And this trip at Punchestown, a kind of a a sharp enough 3 miles with an easy finish. He's probably 2.5, kind of extended 2.5 miler, but 3 miles at Punchestown should be okay for him. Paul Townend in all his glory. And I just think that he's kind of an underrated horse, having been the apple of everybody's eye for a while. He kind of went out of fashion for a while, and I just thought that his Ryanair Chase win maybe hasn't got the recognition that it should have got in the market. And yeah, I think there's a good chance that he'll at least finish second to Gallop in the Champ.
Okay, so his outright price, as we've said, is 12.0, and Don wants to blame them without market. Gallop in the Champ is 1.36. The champion bumper next, A Dream to Share 2.5, Tully Hill 3.5, It's For Me 9.0, Western Diego 10.0. Bigger prices the rest. 3 shouts for A Dream to Share. Dan or Don, who's most confident? Who's all in here? Hands up. No. Go on, Dan.
I won't be backing him, so leave it to Dan.
I mean, all in would be a stretch. I mean, it's a bumper. I mean, it's always a stretch to be all in. But I say I watched back the champion bumper because I think it's a race that sometimes gets a bit lost in the analysis. And I thought he actually won quite cozily that day on reflection. I think ridden with plenty of patience, as were the likes of It's For Me and Fat to File. He actually had to come widest of all and wait the longest to mount his challenge. But considering the others got first run, he's actually won quite cozily. I think John Gleeson's only ended up using his whip once. Like, he did it quite nicely in the end. Was a messy race, but I wouldn't be too worried about that. And this race does tend to go with some of the more experienced types. I think only Tornado Flyer and Love the Higher Law have won this on the back of 2 starts before. Others tend to have 3 or 4. So it does tend to benefit to have experience. There are horses I like in here, like Western Diego, I think is very talented, but just needs to calm down dramatically. But I think A Dream to Share, maybe the connections factor. I think if he was trained by Willie Mullins, he'd be odds on. But I think what he's done so far has been very impressive. And it's not like he's had a hard season, given he's only actually run really at the Dublin Racing Festival and at Cheltenham. So I think he's got a worthy favourites chance here.
Yeah, just on John Gleeson, Tom. Sorry, like he was brilliant at Cheltenham. Like he hasn't finished his secondary schooling yet. He's doing his leaving cert this year, and to ride now. I know he probably followed Patrick Mullins around, and maybe there was instructions because he was never too far away from him. But to be as patient as he was and to deliver he's a very, very good rider, and to be thrown in among professionals. Remember, like the bumpers in Ireland, it's restricted to amateurs, obviously, but at Cheltenham, against professional riders, to ride his horse with the confidence that he did was phenomenal. And John Kiley, yeah, maybe you're right, Dan. Maybe if he was trained by William Mullins, he'd be shorter. But John Kiley's a very well respected trainer, gentleman, brilliant trainer when he has the right material, and as he's shown many times in the past. So, and even I was chatting to him after he won a mare's bumper at Cork there a few weeks ago. I was asking him about A Dream to Share, and he said, "Yeah, well, we'll see how he is. Like he wasn't definitely coming here." Unless the horse, if he'd recovered in time and if he was happy with him, that he was ready to go again, and he wouldn't run him if he wasn't happy that he had him there and ready to go. So, yeah, I think he's a very, very talented horse. He could be anything, and yeah, it'd be good to see him again.
Well, Facile Vega had won the same previous 2 races coming here as A Dream to Share has, and he was 1.5 last year. I mean, I definitely think the horse should be short. I was mega impressed with what he did at Cheltenham, and I was against it, a bit of a negative. I was completely wrong. I thought he was excellent. So yeah, he's one of the horses I'm gonna pitch in together. One of the 4 over the first couple of days. I thought he was overpriced at 2.5. Matt, I can't remember did you say about Western Diego being a bit keen, or I can't remember what you said now? But
yeah, he's a very keen sort. I mean, he carted Rachel down the hill in the bumper, and that kind of ruined his chance. But very talented horse, no doubt.
Go on then, Matt. What's allaying your concerns about
that? Well, I am concerned. It's the price, really. Just on A Dream to Share, 5 of the 11 Cheltenham winners this century who run here have followed up, 37% profit backing them. So there's a good history for saying exactly what you just said, Tom, that given what he's already done, that he's a bit big in the market. Equally, 8 of the other 18 renewals have gone to horses beaten at Cheltenham. So Western Diego, although he was keen, he was still leading in the straight. And then Rachel was about to go for a whip, and he got really badly hampered. Not slightly hampered, absolutely minced. Lost all momentum and chance. He was allowed to coast home, beaten just under 11 lengths in 7th. He's by Westerner. It's only run on soft ground. So if the rain stayed away, and there's now a forecast saying it might come in during the day on Wednesday, which would help him. He wouldn't want it to dry out too much, perhaps. He's a point winner who won his bumper over 2-3, but he showed a lot of pace at Cheltenham. He was, as Dan said, very keen. So I don't think this sharper test will be a problem. Patrick's chosen Tully Hill. So Western Diego got the assistance, the crack qualified rider, Derek O'Connor, who won this on Kilcruck 2 years ago when Patrick chose the odds-on Sir Gerhard. And 4 of Willie's last 5 winners weren't his shortest in the market. So as at Cheltenham, don't be afraid to back a supposed lesser light at a price in this. He's about 11.0 in early trading. So I'm going with Western Diego, hoping he settles better here.
Giles says Punchestown equals Willie Mullins bingo. Well, I think that basically that's spring jumps racing. Liam says every year people back Favs at Punchestown. Every year they're beaten. Every year we swear we won't back Favs again, and yet here we are. Have you, Matt? I know you won't have anything hard and fast to hand, but do you agree with what Liam's saying there?
I did some research looking at this, and in particular looking at horses who run at Cheltenham and then gone on to either Aintree or Fairyhouse in between, thinking that they would be overbet. And actually, they haven't been particularly. It is you looking at the whole season. So horses that started for particularly Gordon Elliott's at Down Royal at the end, usually the end of October, I tend to be against those when they're short price favourites. But a lot of these races are pretty thin. Willie Mullins has got a lot of the favourites, and he trains them for the spring. So a lot of these short price favourites do go in, particularly over shorter trips where they haven't had 3 mile slogs during the season.
And it's a bit anecdotal, I think. Sometimes you always remember the short prices that get beaten as opposed to the ones that win, because they just tend to be highlighted more. So maybe it's, again, no stats involved, but maybe it's just a bit anecdotal based on what people remember.
All right. We don't have prices for this HSS higher handicap chase, or at least I don't. So apologies if I've missed them, and I'm pretty sure they're we don't have them on Matchbook, and just looking at industry, I can't find anything anyway. But we will cover it nonetheless. And Don and I like hard door. Don, I feel that this is actually his trip, and back in handicap company, he had no chance last time against that field over 2, I don't think. And this is much more his bag anyway. I'm just hoping that he's a little bit less sexy than some of them. So I can see him being sort of 3 or 4 from the top of the betting. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah, no, I think it's trip related. Tom, for me, he's a better horse over the trip. When he ran at Fairyhouse in his beginner's chase earlier this season, I was concerned about the trip. Actually, I thought 2 miles 5 might stretch him a little bit, but Paul Tennant didn't share those concerns. He kicked him out of the gate, and he won really well from the Goffer, who's gone and enhanced that form since. So yeah, like he's been running in graded races since, including last time in the Arkle, obviously grade 1, and even when Indiana Jones beat him at Navan, that was a grade 3 race, and he had Flamebearer behind him that day, and that probably, well, almost certainly wasn't Flamebearer as running, but he enhanced the form since, and he wasn't beaten far by Indiana Jones over 2 miles. I just think over the longer trip, out in front again, Punchestown is a good pace track over fences. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what price he is, because Paul Tennant has chosen to ride him in front of last year's winner, Royal Rendezvous, is 11 now. And it wouldn't be surprising to see him run a big race again, but I think Hador could be the one.
Matt Toombs?
Yeah, going in with novices is a good strategy in this sort of race. I used to do a Cheltenham preview with the old head of handicapping, Phil Smith, and he always used to ask why anyone would run their novice in the novices handicap chase, potentially run into an Applutar where they could take on exposed handicappers in the plate. And since this became a grade A handicap in 2010, novices are 5 from 37. You made a 73% profit backing them blind. So I can see that. My one is very much dependent on the ground, i.e. that it won't rain too much on Wednesday. Lieutenant Command, he won off 135 in a grade B event at Leopardstown last month. And that was his first run on a sound surface since tipping up in the novice handicap chase when he went off only 10.0 here last year. Previous run on decent ground, he beat a now 140 rated rival at Fairyhouse. So that Leopardstown race absolutely fell apart. But rewatching it, I was taken with how confident Michael O'Sullivan was. He nodded at the last, lost momentum, and he just didn't have to get serious with him. So the bare form's ordinary, but it was how easily he won. Liam McKenna, who's so cool when guarding Good Time Johnny home in the Pretence final when everything went wrong, was good value for his £5 claim. So if the rain stays away, I'm hoping he'll be one of the outsiders here who might go well at a price.
And Dan.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cliche alert with I like the way you're thinking, but I just think he's a bit of a spring/early summer horse. Like, you go back a couple of seasons, he was making a mockery of his mark at Galway. Last year, he showed precious little before finishing 6th in the Pipe and then 2nd in the 3-mile handicap at Aintree. And again, I think after that, he was 2nd to Rock Road with Willie Mullins, who then won 2 of his next 3 and went up £20. And then Peregrine Run was in 3rd. And I think he went on to finish 5th in the plate at Market Raisin, which is always a decent race. And then he won at Worcester and Chepstow earlier in the year. He's only £1 higher for that run. And I think he showed a bit more life last time out behind Lieutenant Command in first-time blinkers. I looked at Gavin Cromwell's record with blinkers. And you look at first-time application, only a 7% strike rate. But second time out, that improves to 21%. So very profitable to black blind. Mark Walsh goes on board for the first time in a few runs. Been chosen over Andy Dufresne, who also runs and has a £7 claimer on board. I think he's just the type to get laid out for a race in the spring. And yeah, we know these connections. They often do pay dividends. So I think he's got a cracking chance here.
All right, that's the handicap chase. Other bets, I'm going to be backing, again, it's price relative, but I think Sandog Clegane will head the betting for the hurdle at 4:15. 3-Car Bragg I'm a big fan, and I think they were stupid running him in the race they did over 3 miles at the festival. It was a wrong choice. Back over a more suitable trip. I think he should be second in the betting, hopefully, and be a backable price. Matt, you've got one for us.
Yeah, this is in the Louis Fitzgerald Hotel Hurdle, which is a 2-mile 4 winners of 1 minor conditions race. It doesn't look as strong as it often does this year. I quite like Tagman, one of the Colts and Geldings winners of 1 bumper here from good horses last season. The second Sir Argus got an RPR of 135 over hurdles. The third Monbeg Park was first past the post off 133 in a Grade A handicap at Fairyhouse the other day. And Tagman ran just fair races twice over 2 miles over hurdles. 4th to Ashrow Diamond, 3rd to Founder 50, Good Maidens. Look much more suited by this sort of trip when 8 went 2nd to Goodland at Leopardstown, Search for Glory, Embassy Gardens behind of him. And he gets £6 from the winners here. So with good course form at the right time of year, hopefully he'll be in the mix with track, trip and ground, all looking to suit.
And I think you're the only one with a lay, Matt. You are going to lay Gaelic Warrior, are you?
Yeah, this comes back to what the lads were talking about. He was too keen in the Ballymore. Yeah, this step up in trip doesn't look to suit. This looks the classic Mullins tactic of chucking a B team novice from short and intermediate trips into a 3-mile Grade 1. He often does it in the Albert Bartlett and seeing how they get on. And usually in the Albert Bartlett, they don't get on very well. When he wins that, it's with a Monkfish or a Penhill who are proven stayers. So I can see him bombing out entirely. I'll probably be laying him in both the win and the place markets.
Good. I hope you're wrong. Best bets?
Probably will be.
Well, no, I doubt it. Best bets. Mine is Brave Man's Game without Galopande shot.